So I was recently smacked in the face with probably one of, if not the biggest harsh truth I've had in my life up to this point. And it comes down to self-worth. You're not just worth more than where you're currently at if you're unhappy or stuck, just because you work really hard, or even because you have succeeded at certain things, or because you're inherently a good person. Your worth is equal to whatever the system you're in can extract from you and reward you accordingly. And this does not mean that you don't have value as a human, but it does mean that if you confuse self-worth as a human with market worth and money and getting paid, or if you think that believing in yourself is enough, that's where a lot of us end up suffering. I'm just as guilty of this as the next person. Modern self-help, the industry as we know it, is working against us because it's tied to this idea that worth is equal to material possessions, living your dream life, living a passionate, purposeful life, and that somehow everyone should just have respect for and from everyone else. But the hard part is self-worth is contextual. And so I was having a conversation with a friend who had previously worked at one of the big FANG companies, so multi-billion-dollar company. This person was making $400K plus a year. And over the last couple of years, they ended up going to a startup. And so at this startup, this person was very excited to get started and to work and to potentially grow the thing. And now there's just been some friction. There's been some friction in how the business owner wants to go about the business. And it's just a lot of interpersonal stuff that probably would be fixed if they just had a conversation. And this person is now probably making a little bit less than half of what they were previously making at this big company. And there are some incentive structures there to, like, if the company grows, then they'll get paid more. But at a startup, it's different. Making almost $500,000 a year at one of these large multi-billion-dollar companies, that's chump change to them. And everything that you do influences a lot of other people. Whereas at a startup, that's not so much chump change. Therefore, the value that you are going to be able to be given is going to be directly tied to how much the company grows. And in this case, it's the same person. It's just a completely different game, and it's a different form of leverage. And so most people don't want to hear this, and they don't want to accept that this is the reality, and that it is hard to sometimes find these other systems or these things that you can extract more from, and it can extract more from you in terms of the value that you put out. And so self-help culture tells us to look in the mirror and repeat, you are enough. I am enough. I am the greatest that there is. I deserve everything. And sure, it's nice for this little inner child that you have to hear, but it's not going to change your bank account. It's not going to change your opportunities. And it's also not going to necessarily change the way people treat you in the real world. And so I experienced this whenever I was about 26. I was living in a house with 4 other guys, and I was making about $1,200 a month. And this place was a disaster, like in terms of like just the living conditions. So I was grinding my face off. I was working multiple part-time jobs, trying to get some kind of a business going as an online trainer so that I could make extra income online, and maybe that be my thing that I did. But I was also sending out a bunch of job applications just because I was coming out of college. I had a lot of student loan debt, and I needed to be paid. Now, I knew I had potential, and I knew that I was willing to work as hard as anybody else to get there. But I didn't have anything to show for it at the time. And so my self-worth ultimately ended up being tied to 2 things. 1, how freaking broke I was. And 2, whether I could attract women based on that. And I was ashamed of both. So bringing someone back to a house that's a pigsty that looked like a college frat house post-party wasn't an option. I didn't feel seen in the world. I didn't feel like anyone wanted to actually give me a shot at that point. And eventually I started to believe that maybe I wasn't worth anymore. Maybe that wasn't that life that I wanted to live, or the things I wanted to do, or the person I wanted to be. Maybe it just wasn't for me. And so then at some point I got referred to a sales role at a premium health club company. And I absolutely fucking crushed it. Felt like I was finally proving myself. I had made them more money than they had ever made in the summer, in that period of time that I had excelled over everyone else. And then bam, laid off during the pandemic or at the end of the year after I'd sold them and gotten things going again in the summer. Out like completely out of nowhere. But that moment changed me. And so I had a visceral reaction like, how the fuck could they do this to me? I made them all of this money. I broke all of these records for them, got them memberships, got people in the door, got them more income. And something inside of me broke at that point in terms of my perspective. So it wasn't like a weak thing as I broke. In fact, it was something that like actually propelled me forward, gave me so much anger that I was able to fuel it into something to be better. And so it was clarifying to me. It made things make a lot more sense. And so at that point, I realized the game that I was actually playing. And I started learning how to play it better in terms of business and the way that the world is. I studied psychology, human nature, narcissism, and power dynamics. And I adopted the mindset of it's a dog-eat-dog world, and this dog's got to eat. So from that point on, I stopped waiting to be discovered and stopped just kind of sitting there saying my affirmations and writing in my journal and just waiting for things to happen. And I just started thinking about things in terms of leverage, systems, and just overall value exchange. Basically, how can I make other people's businesses better, run easier, and make their lives better? Not just how good I was at making sales, but how useful could I be to people that had more money or to businesses that had more money so that I could be paid more in return? So how well could I move the needle in any environment that I would go into? And how can I learn and see things from a place of principles rather than specific siloed pieces of information and like tactics? And so what I've learned from all of that is that self-worth is tied to all of that. It is tied to your usefulness in the world and the way that you see yourself in the environments and ecosystems that you're in. And so the idea of self-worth from I am a human, I deserve certain basic rights. Yes, absolutely, but it isn't everything. That is just the floor. It's not the ceiling. You're not going to live the life you want with just assuming that because you're human, you somehow deserve like more than the average person. If you look at truly what average is. So it's your starting point. It's not your cash out value. Your environment matters. The context of that environment matters. The game that you are playing and the leverage that you bring to the table, the unfair advantages that you bring to the table, no matter what that is the game that matters. And so we aren't just like these beautiful souls waiting to be discovered. We are dynamic humans with skills and flaws and potential and blind spots. And your value is determined by how well you can activate what you have in the right context. And yeah, there is a kind of worth that transcends all of this. Okay? Dignity. You absolutely deserve that. You do deserve to live a life of meaning. But if you want to be paid well, you want to be respected deeply, or given high-level opportunities in the world, you have to start asking yourself, what environment am I in? How am I using my value? Am I useful to other people? What kind of game am I playing here? And does it align to my strengths? And does it align with who I really want to be and the person that I see myself as in the future? And you have to start living that as if you're that now. So you're not worth more just because you believe you are. You're worth more when you become someone who earns it and puts yourself in places that actually reward it. And sometimes it's being able to understand what people don't have your best interests at heart, what people are truly reliable and trustworthy so that you can put everything you have into whatever the thing they have is, and then they will pay you accordingly, because there's always going to be bad actors. And that's a whole other skill set in itself, to be able to deal with bad actors and to be able to actually see them in acting in the ways that they are before anything ever actually happens. So ask yourself, where are you expecting to be rewarded for something that you haven't actually activated or that you haven't achieved yet, or an environment that you haven't even been in yet? Because odds are you might already be valuable. All right. You've just been a fish trying to climb up a tree. You are in the wrong environment for you. you're not in the lane that you're in. So for me, I was always pretty, like, I was above average at sales. I wasn't like exceptional, but my skill set, the thing that I'm really fucking good at, that I've now come to realize that a lot of people aren't, is seeing the big picture, strategy, operations, seeing seeing the leverage points in things, data analysis. You can still get by and get to a certain level in a lane that maybe you're not that good at, but ultimately you're not going to have that fire underneath you. And so maybe if you are in the right lane and nobody around you sees that, it's time to stop blaming them. Or if you're in the wrong lane and you're just getting frustrated running your head up against the wall, maybe it's time to stop blaming them. And maybe it's time for you to find a way to just simply start playing a better game and finding better opportunities and start trying more things and just putting yourself out there, maybe taking a little bit more risk, maybe learning a little bit more so that you can go balls to the wall to actually do something that means something to you so that you stop feeling like shit about yourself.